Turning 40 often feels like the finish line, not the starting block. Most people assume it's too late to reinvent themselves, clinging to the perceived safety of the familiar. They mistake fear for reality, settling into a rut they call comfort. But here's the truth: fear is a phantom, a self-made prison. It doesn't reside in your job, your debts, or seemingly unattainable goals. It exists only because you've built it in your mind. The irony? As you age, overcoming fear becomes easier. Experience teaches you that many imagined catastrophes never materialize. The real enemy isn't a lack of courage, it's a lack of understanding. Insecurity stems from ignorance, from failing to see clearly what's in front of you. When we don't understand how something works, our minds conjure the worst-case scenario. That's why so many hesitate to invest, start a business, change careers, or pursue lasting relationships. They obsess over, what if I fail? What if I lose everything? What if it's too late? But rarely do they ask, what if it works? That simple shift in perspective is the chasm between a life of limitations and one of boundless expansion. I know this dynamic intimately. I once worked for Toronto Fire Services, a secure, stable job, the kind nobody ever left. It offered comfort, but it meant sacrificing my dreams. A deep yearning for more warred with a crippling fear of the unknown, of judgment, of ending up with nothing. Sleepless nights were spent wrestling with what ifs. Fear silenced my aspirations. What ultimately freed me wasn't sudden bravery, but knowledge. A mentor helped me see that what I called fear was merely a lack of information. I didn't understand my own mind, how to translate thoughts into results, and so I defaulted to worst-case thinking. Through my studies, I discovered a profound truth: the conscious mind chooses thoughts, but the subconscious accepts them unquestioningly. If I fed my subconscious with failure, fear, and insecurity, how could I expect a different outcome? Consider your own life. How many promising investment opportunities did you miss, paralyzed by the thought, what if I lose this money? Only later to see others thrive with the very same investment? This wasn't a lack of ability, but ignorance fueling fear stifling action. This response is widespread. Research shows most people default to negative scenarios when presented with new opportunities. That's why 80% of adults remain in unsatisfying jobs, not for lack of alternatives, but out of fear of losing the perceived security of the familiar. This fear is an illusion, born from a lack of understanding about transforming desires into results. When I finally grasped this, everything changed. Fear didn't vanish instantly, but it ceased to control me. Doubt became a signal to learn more, understand better, research further. The more knowledge I gained, the less room fear had. Every step, however hesitant, proved my fear to be a mirage. Think about your own life. How many projects, dreams, opportunities have you missed because of fear masquerading as prudence? How many times did you choose inertia over unhappiness, all in the name of supposed safety? Wasn't that safety far more costly than the risk of trying? What I learned, what can transform your life, is that fear can be useful, warning us of genuine dangers. But paralyzing fear is simply ignorance. The only way to conquer it is to replace it with understanding, study, and knowledge. By understanding how your mind works, by illuminating the darkness, fear loses its power. This is the foundation of genuine change, realizing the enemy isn't out there, but within, fueled by ignorance. Seek understanding, and fear transforms from a prison into a signal, a sign that you're on the verge of something new, something that can elevate your life to unimaginable heights. Few realize that fear doesn't spring from nothing. It's the culmination of a silent sequence that begins innocuously. It starts with worry. You repeatedly think, will I have enough money? What if I lose my job? What if something happens to my family? These seemingly insignificant questions breed doubt. Doubt morphs into fear. Fear, when nurtured, generates anxiety. Repressed anxiety becomes depression, and prolonged depression weakens the immune system, leading to physical illness. This invisible pathway destroys millions of lives, yet few discuss it. I've seen this play out in the lives of people close to me. Workers burdened by worries about bills, their children's education, providing for their families. Initially, it seemed like mere stress. But persistent worry eroded their health, leading to ulcers, hypertension, heart disease. It all began with incessant thoughts. The body can't endure prolonged tension. Medical research shows over 70% of current illnesses are linked to stress and poorly managed emotions. The root isn't physical, it's mental. Negative thoughts send orders to the subconscious, and the body responds as if danger is real, releasing hormones, accelerating the heart, tensing muscles. But there's no danger, only distorted thoughts. This pent-up energy paves the way for disease. I experienced this firsthand. While at the fire department, before changing my life, I was trapped in constant worry. The job was secure, but the feeling of wasting my life consumed me. I suppressed the anxiety, pretending everything was fine. Inside, I felt suffocated, affecting my health, my mood, my relationships. Then I understood that suppression wasn't the answer. Holding on to anxiety only distanced me from what I desired. This happens to millions after 40. They accumulate experiences, responsibilities, debts, children. They carry an immense mental load, but instead of expressing or transforming those thoughts, they choose silence. This repressed energy turns into sadness, and eventually, illness. It's no coincidence that so many adults in this age group face health problems. The body reflects a mental pattern ignored for years. It's frightening how a small worry can grow and destroy a life. How many times have you experienced this? Starting with a worry about a bill, a deadline, a difficult conversation, only to find yourself in a state of uncontrollable anxiety. How often has this anxiety led to sleepless nights, loss of energy, lack of motivation? This is the invisible cycle that traps people. But this cycle can be broken. It persists because most don't understand the origin of fear. People believe the problem lies with their boss, the government, the economy, their partner, but it actually originates in thought. In the mind, worry takes root, giving rise to the subsequent stages. As long as we don't understand this process, we'll remain in a vicious cycle, falling ill inwardly and sabotaging ourselves outwardly. Fear is a signal, a warning that you're feeding your mind unsubstantiated ideas. Anxiety is the body attempting to cope with undirected energy. Depression is a reflection of years of emotional repression. Physical illness is the body's final cry for change. This understanding transforms everything, because you realize you no longer need to be swept along by this cycle. When I talk about understanding, I don't mean an abstract concept, but practical knowledge that acts as a key. Understanding is knowing precisely what happens in your mind when you think, recognizing how the conscious mind chooses and the subconscious accepts impressions without question. When you understand this mechanism, everything changes. The energy that fueled worry can now be used to build, to create clear images of what you want, imprinting them within until your life begins to obey. The first thing I teach is deliberate mental practice. Visualizing in detail, repeating the scene until you feel your body react. This isn't mysticism, it's technique. Science shows that well-executed mental practice produces real results. Imagining actions with clarity and emotion has a positive and measurable effect on the final outcome. But occasional imagining isn't enough, it requires habit. Repetition creates automaticity. When you cultivate a daily pattern, a short study session, visualization, an affirmation accompanied by feeling, it ceases to depend on momentary will and becomes automatic. Research on habit formation shows that the process takes time and consistency, months of daily repetition until the new response becomes natural. And here's a crucial connection between finances and mental clarity. When the mind is preoccupied with financial worries, it loses its capacity for reasoning and decision-making. Financial stress creates a mental tunnel. You become so focused on putting out fires that you lose the ability to plan, learn, and create. Studies show that scarcity imposes a measurable cognitive load, reducing attention and decision quality. Understanding this changes everything. If you recognize that the problem isn't lack of willpower, but mental overload, the solution lies in alleviating that overload, through routines that enhance your mental capacity and small victories that reinforce your confidence. The practical bridge between understanding and results is built on 4 pillars: focus study, visualization with feeling, small testable actions, and progress tracking. Focus study means choosing wisely: books, courses, people who demonstrate results, understanding principles, not just memorizing formulas. Visualization with feeling means creating the desired scene with sensory detail and emotion, not just imagining the amount in your bank account, but feeling the security, the smile, the conversation you'll have when it's happening. Small testable actions are low-risk experiments. Offer a service for a few hours, invest a small amount to learn, talk to 3 new people about your idea. These micro-actions provide rapid feedback to your mind. Recording progress, noting a victory daily, however small, provides proof that the new programming is working. Let me share an experience illustrating this process. When I decided to study thoroughly, it wasn't just intellectual curiosity. I applied what I learned as a scientific experiment in my life. There was a plan: study daily, visualize, take small actions, and adjust based on what worked. In the first year after adopting this discipline, my financial reality changed almost magically. I went from having only a few thousand to building a business that yielded results I had previously deemed impossible. I remember the day I realized it had happened. I cried with joy, feeling a mixture of relief and ecstasy, and understood with complete clarity that what had held me back wasn't the outside world, but the programming I carried. This transformation brought a feeling of hope I had never experienced before. It wasn't frivolous, it was living proof that understanding plus action transforms destiny. Practically speaking, if you're over 40 and want to transform your life now, do this. Set aside 20 to 30 minutes a day, 10 minutes of reading or specific study on what you want: finance, business, skills, 10 minutes of structured visualization, detail, who's with you, the environment, the sound, the feeling, and 5 to 10 minutes for a micro-action that tests a hypothesis: calling a potential client, opening a small investment account, posting a proposal. Repeat this daily. Over time, repetition will install new commands in your subconscious that will align your attitude with productive actions. This process is also supported by self-efficacy theories. When you accumulate experiences of mastery, even small ones, your belief in your ability grows, fueling more successful actions. In other words, you don't need to feel capable before acting. Start with small steps that generate concrete proof, and belief will follow. One final practical note: stop waiting for a big moment to begin. Daily study and practice are the antidote to hesitation. Make the next 90 days a cycle of learning and experimentation. Adjust, reinforce, repeat. The mind has its own intelligence. Feed it with understanding, and it will react, reorganizing your habits, unlocking your creativity, and creating space for opportunities you only imagine today. If you accept this as a method and not empty philosophy, you will see proof every day, small evidence that accumulates until, suddenly, the impossible ceases to be impossible. Fear and faith are twin forces, 2 different expressions of the same principle. Both require you to believe in something you can't see. Fear makes you believe in the catastrophe that hasn't yet happened, and faith makes you believe in the victory that hasn't yet materialized. The difference is that fear paralyzes, and faith moves. Think carefully. How many times have you made decisions based on a negative future that only existed in your imagination? How many times have you stopped yourself from taking a step because you believed more in the possibility of failure than in the possibility of success? This unconscious choice is what separates those who advance from those who remain stagnant. I remember the first time I realized this truth in myself. Before opening my first business, I spent sleepless nights imagining everything that could go wrong. I mentally saw debts accumulating, friends mocking me, my family looking at me with disappointment. None of this had happened, but inside it felt so real that my body reacted as if it were already true. My heart raced, my hands sweated, and I felt that tightness in my stomach. It was living proof that fear has the power to create an emotional reality even before something exists. But when I turned the key and started allowing myself to visualize what could go right, I realized that the same mechanism could be used in my favor. Instead of imagining bankruptcy, I began to imagine clients coming in, bills being paid, my life being transformed. What changed wasn't the situation, but the perspective with which I saw it. And this perspective is what differentiates ordinary lives from extraordinary ones. Oprah Winfrey is a striking example of this. She was born in extreme poverty, experienced abuse, and lost a lot early in life. If she had chosen to cling to fear, she would have been destined to repeat a cycle of pain and limitations. But she chose to believe in something she couldn't yet see, a future of influence, abundance, and impact. This faith didn't erase the obstacles, but it kept her firm in the face of them. Today, it's impossible to look at her trajectory and not realize that faith was the invisible fuel that took her where it was written that it would be impossible to arrive. This is the power of faith based on understanding. It's not about believing blindly, but about understanding that the mind responds to what you feed it. Studies in psychology show that expectation shapes the outcome. It's the so-called placebo effect. When a person believes they are receiving something beneficial, their body often reacts as if it were real, even if it's just a neutral substance. The same applies to life. When you believe something will work out, your body, your emotions, and your actions align with that expectation, creating pathways for it to materialize. But here's the trap: if you don't consciously decide, your mind decides for you. And by default, it tends to choose fear, because fear is the instinctive survival reaction. It's the automatic mode. But living on autopilot after 40 means repeating patterns that no longer serve you. It means clinging to what guarantees only survival and never experiencing what brings fulfillment. How many people do you know who reach this age trapped in jobs they don't like, in relationships that don't fulfill them, in routines that only consume energy, because they believed that changing was too risky? It's not reality that holds them back, it's the distorted faith they placed in fear. The choice is always present: either you use your imagination to build a future that propels you, or to fabricate a nightmare that paralyzes you. Both options require energy, focus, and belief. But only one opens doors. When you understand this, you realize that faith is not a spiritual luxury, it's a practical tool. It's looking at the same circumstances that fuel someone's anxiety and deciding to see them as fertile ground for growth. It's believing in a positive outcome with such intensity that your body begins to act as if it were already inevitable. Fear doesn't vanish overnight, even with unshakable belief. Doubt lingers, but choosing faith is always an option. Think of a seesaw: on one side, the image of failure; on the other, victory. The more you nurture that positive vision, the heavier the faith side becomes, until fear loses its grip. This balance isn't a one-day achievement, it's a continuous practice. You've already done this countless times, without even realizing it. Loving someone? That's faith in the invisible. Starting a new job? Trusting in an uncertain future. Raising kids? Believing your efforts will pay off. Faith is already within you. The question is, will you continue to squander this power by feeding your fears, or will you harness it to build the life you crave? Sometimes, fear transcends mere thought; it becomes a physical wall, a genuine roadblock. That's where many give up, convinced there are no alternatives. But there's a simple method to break this cycle and regain control. When fear arises, pinpoint it. Ask yourself, what exactly am I afraid of right now? Putting it into words immediately weakens its power. Then, ask, is this a fact, or just my mind spinning a story? This rational analysis cuts fear off at the root, because most of what terrifies us is pure speculation. Next, replace that negative thought with a positive image, a vivid mental picture of your desired outcome. I used this method when launching my cleaning business. No experience, training, or resources beyond an idea and sheer willpower. Negative thoughts bombarded me daily: you'll fail, no one will hire you, you'll be broke. But instead of surrendering, I wrote them down, questioned them, and replaced them with positive affirmations: I will thrive, my services are valuable, my work will open doors. I visualized clients, contracts, my transformed life. The result? Over $110,000 in revenue within a year. This transformation didn't happen because fear disappeared, but because I learned to confront it. And this method works in every aspect of life. Consider someone fearing a career change in their 40s. The automatic thought, it's too late. If they stop, write that down, and ask, fact or assumption? They'll find no proof. Countless people launch businesses, careers, and projects later in life and achieve remarkable success. Replacing the limiting belief with a picture of success doesn't erase fear instantly, but it creates a new internal reference point, fueling action. The same applies to finances. Someone avoiding investment for fear of loss, first, acknowledge the thought, I could lose everything. Second, confront reality, low-risk investments exist, safe options are available, and strategies minimize losses. Third, create the positive image, watching your money grow. Feeling the security of returns, and visualizing the freedom it brings. This shifts your emotional frequency, and when emotion changes, actions follow. Relationships too. How many stay in harmful situations, fearing loneliness? That fear fuels bad choices. But by questioning it and replacing it with the image of a healthy relationship, you start aligning your actions with this new standard. You stop settling and act in accordance with your vision. In short, fear only holds power because it's fueled by repeated mental images. Change those images, and you change the emotion, and with it, the action. This isn't theory, it's practical. Whether it's starting a business, public speaking, investing, or reinventing yourself after 40, the process remains the same: acknowledge, question, replace. With each repetition, fear yields to faith. And there's something even more powerful: it builds internal proof that you can trust yourself. Each fear faced and action taken despite it adds evidence of your capability. This self-confidence multiplies, and the impossible becomes natural. It worked for me, for many others, and it can work for you. Fear isn't conquered through ignorance, but through mastery, transforming it into fuel for growth. After 40, time doesn't rewind. Every decision left unmade, every opportunity missed, is irreversible. Fear at this stage is even more dangerous. It doesn't just paralyze, it steals days, months, and years that could be used to build something extraordinary. I challenge you, for 7 days, whenever fear arises, stop and write down exactly what you're thinking. No censorship, no trying to appear strong, just record the thought. Then, write the opposite, the faith-based version, as if the best outcome is already happening. It seems small, but this exercise creates a consciousness shift. Materializing fear on paper reveals it's not an invincible monster, but simply a sentence, an idea, an image you created. Writing the faith version creates an alternative, a possibility your subconscious begins to accept. The mind doesn't distinguish reality from imagination, it reacts to the images you repeat. In a week, you'll notice a shift in your emotional state. This isn't abstract, it's based on how the mind works. Writing activates brain areas responsible for logic and organization, stripping fear of its power, which thrives on raw emotion. Creating the faith version encourages your mind to find solutions, see pathways, and align your actions to support this new pattern. I remember a time when, despite achieving much, I felt a deep fear of losing it all. The thought, what if it all ends? What if the business fails, haunted me. I started writing these thoughts, one by one, and beside them, I created the faith version. My business grows continuously, infinite opportunities exist, my work impacts lives, ensuring expansion. Initially, they felt like mere words, but over time, I noticed my body reacted differently. I felt more motivated, my decisions clearer, and the paralyzing fear dissipated. Confronting fear and replacing it with faith changed my energy and results. This process has radically transformed countless lives. Imagine someone terrified of public speaking. Day 1, I'll freeze, they'll laugh, I'll forget everything. Beside it, my voice is clear, people listen attentively, I inspire confidence. Repeat daily, visualize the positive scene, feel it as if it's already happening. When speaking, the body reacts not to fear, but to the repeated new image. The result? More confidence, greater impact, stronger presence. Now ask yourself, how much longer will you let fear make your decisions? A week of this exercise could be a turning point. Imagine, in 7 days, realizing that overwhelming fear has lost half its strength. Imagine, in 30 days, seeing previously unthinkable decisions feel natural. And imagine, in 6 months, noticing the cycle of paralysis has vanished, replaced by active faith. Fear only holds power because it's unconsciously repeated. Reverse the game, consciously repeat faith. After 7 days, you won't just have written sentences, you'll have trained your mind to choose a new path. Each time you do this, you reinforce the truth that it's not too late, not too risky, not too impossible. The impossible would be expecting your life to change without changing the images you feed it daily. This challenge is the first step to proving to yourself that after 40, you can not only conquer fear, but destroy it, transforming it into fuel to live what you haven't yet lived. You have the power to change everything by replacing images with faith and understanding. With each step, you create proof that you can live free from being a prisoner of fear. A new video is on screen, ready to take you further. Click and join me as we climb another step on this ladder of evolution, to become 1% better than you are now. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.